When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
Oh, you magnificent bastard, I read your book!
I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Of course you realize this means war.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Good morning, good day, good evening. It's Thursday night. It's February the 25th, year of our Lord 2021. Glad you're here. We're going to have some fun tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I'm broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled with a K. I'm here 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast of Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building downtown at 10th and L Streets. And at the end of the show, when I exit the plush, resplendent, sumptuous, and palatial SHR Media studios, I'll be smelling the odoriferous stench of sulfur, brimstone, and evil emanating from downtown Sacramento. So be forewarned, what you're about to hear for the next 2 hours consists of my opinion, and my opinion only. The Saloon currently is serving stiff drinks, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, tradition, intent, and common sense out the front and back doors, depending upon the porn quotient. I'm sorry, fear porn quotient. Remember, we don't water our drinks, just like we don't water our conversation, politics, religion, crime, culture, race, sex, and economics. science, law. We talk about it all right here at the Saloon, where the speech is free, but the booze, she is not. It's 2021, and I am done with bipartisanship and compromise. And I understand, we must all understand, that I am also done with the Republican Party. This is the new age of modern political warfare, gaslighting, lies, massive hypocrisy, half-truths, and all on the part of the Demorats, the leftists, and the American media maggots. They have all declared that they are on an open war footing against you. And make no mistake, 2021 is going to be the year of retribution, revenge, and punishment of conservatives by Demorats. Make no mistake. Now, in the Saloon tonight, we have Lonnie Poindexter for the entire 2 hours. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening, my brother. Thank you for inviting me back to the Saloon.
And
the drinks are not watered down.
No, they aren't.
I can vouch for that.
You can vouch for that. See, because what we have in the Saloon tonight... Here, let me do this. Maybe I can... all right, let's go to this. Now, you can see the bulbous one over on the right. You can see Lonnie Poindexter on the left. And unfortunately, what you can't see is sitting in the Saloon tonight is Sergeant Booker. And you may be saying, well, wait a minute, Sergeant Booker, I thought he's in the chat room all the time. Well, the funny thing is, it was only recently discovered that Sergeant Booker is in Sacramento. And so we discovered, hey, why not have Sergeant Booker here in the Saloon to listen in and see what's going on with the show.
This is the infamous Sergeant Booker.
This is Sergeant Booker. You didn't know that when you were talking to him. See, Sean is in the room right now.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah, this is Sergeant Booker. Now you know.
Now I know.
Okay, now do you feel bad about Earl?
No.
No, of course not. No, you don't.
You old bastard.
Yeah, yo bastard. Yo bastard. That's all I get talked about around here is yo bastard. So what occurred is that Lonnie Poindexter and I decided... Oh, also, Mike Fitzpatrick in Facebook chat, and Josh Kemp in Facebook chat, and Teresa Colette, Mimi Teresa in chat as well. Haven't seen you for a long time.
That girl from Jersey.
That guy, that's right. She's a Jersey girl. Jersey, Joysey. So thanks for being here tonight, Melanie. I appreciate it. In the SHR Media chat room, there's the Alaskan one each, Sergeant Booker himself, and one viewer who will not be revealed because that's not what we do here. We don't unmask visitors to the Saloon, so thanks to everybody for being here. And Sergeant Sean is also being a great guy. He is pouring liquid into glasses for individuals here in the Saloon. So maybe I should just say, if you guys happen to be in the Sacramento area before the studio goes away...
What am I, the bartender?
Yes, you are the bartender. Hey, listen, dude, you opened the bottle. You gave a glass to Lonnie. You gave a glass to Sergeant Booker.
Yeah, I like them.
I know. Did you see me ask for a glass? I didn't ask for a glass.
No,
because I got to drive home.
Yeah, every time I've offered, you've said no.
I've said no because I have to drive home.
To an Irish guy's heart?
Wait until the studio gets into the living room of my wife's house. Might there be drinking?
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
I don't know.
Yeah, but nobody else can that.
Well, that's right.
Why you're selfish.
Okay.
Sean, just know
I'm selfish?
I know another Irishman by the name of Mr. Fitzpatrick that when you go and you have libations or drinks at his house, he will drink up all the good booze and then accuse you of drinking it all.
Ooh, see, that's funny because Lonnie Mike is listening to us right now.
That's why I said it.
In Facebook chat.
That's why I said it.
Specifically, I said earlier that this is my favorite bottle, and I won't share any of this. It was a gift.
Uh-huh.
So what is it?
I can't blame anybody else for drinking it if I'm the only one.
It's like any good Irishman.
Jefferson's Ocean Aged at Sea. It's a bourbon.
Jefferson. Okay, ships. I will hold this up so everybody can see. I have never heard of this before.
Yeah.
It's called Jefferson's Ocean Aged at Sea.
It's fantastic.
Never.
Yep.
Blend of straight bourbon whiskey, very small batch, 117.5 proof.
Is this where there was a storm and the cask fell off the boat into the ocean and they had to go get it?
They actually age them in the barrels on ships, so it's constantly rocking. And I think
really?
2 years.
Wow, that's unique.
A couple years ago, yeah.
Okay.
I number one, I had no idea that exists.
Neither did I. And I'm a huge drunk.
But
the people at home didn't hear that, thank God.
Yeah, but his official term is chief mixologist for
Yes.
SHR Media.
Yes.
You can call me whatever you want. I don't care.
That would make you the Mike, the MIC, the mixologist in chief.
Ah, there you go.
What did you say?
I said you're the Mike, MIC, the mixologist in chief.
Mixologist in chief.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, we're having this show tonight because Lonnie and I had an extemporaneous, probably hour and a half conversation about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks ago, again, just like Mike Fitzpatrick, the first time he talked to me, we spoke for, and I had no idea who Mike was until that time, but we talked because we shared so damn much in common for probably 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And just like then, I said to Mike, you know, if I'd only recorded that, I would have had a show. And no, I didn't. And then our conversation a couple of weeks ago, I said, damn, if I'd only recorded that, I would have had a show. But what we since discovered, and I wanted to get you back, the only issue is that you have had some very unfortunate tragedies that have occurred in your life recently. And so I want to say to you, your uncle passed away, and then a very good friend of yours,
one of my best friends,
a pastor, passed away at a relatively young age,
and he's a good friend of Mike's as well.
And so that was a very sad thing to have occurred. And then
he would have had a blast on your show, and I was like when I came on the show. And I told Bruce, I said, man, I got to get you on BZ's show because you two would get along famously. And he was, I'll put it to you this way. His mother said concerning her son, Bruce, her only son, her only child, that he was born with a microphone in one hand and a telephone in the other.
Really?
Oh, that's his mother said that about him. So he was just that kind of guy, and had our worldview and was bold enough to speak it. Not only in the pulpit, but out on the street. He, in fact, most recently at the pro-life march in San Francisco, he was marching right there next to the Archbishop of San Francisco, Archbishop de Corleone. He was a wonderful guy and left us way too soon. But yeah, he'd had a blast on the show. He's, man, just get me scheduled. I'll come on. But
it's sad. I would have loved to have had him on the show.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, you've had a very bad 2 weeks. But what we did talk about is we started, and I thought, okay, just the general circumstances of this would make a great show in and of itself. When we last spoke for about an hour and a half, you were going into a ton of things that involved your family. Mm-hmm. And then we discovered, and sort of the theme of the show tonight is, as far as I'm concerned, leftist Demorats and the American media maggots exist to do one thing, and that's to divide the nation. Mm-hmm. So that people like you and I can't see eye to eye, can't get together, and I want people to understand, and that's one of the reasons that I literally had, when I first started, I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to anyway, because it's now an issue with the LDAM, is I wanted to have black people on the show, although, as you say, paint jobs don't mean a hill of beans, but paint jobs do if you're in the world of leftists, so that people could understand that there are actual black Americans out there who are conservatives, because you don't hear folks like that very much. And everyone needs to understand the conservatives. I almost said Republican Party.
Now there's a show right there.
Oh, God. Don't care about your paint job.
Yeah.
Come one, come all. If you're a conservative, get into the damn tent. And so the theme of the show tonight is so everybody understands, and this is so, I can't say it's stupid, but I can't say it's sad to have to emphasize the fact that conservatives of all stripes have the same thoughts and backgrounds and experiences, and we have infinitely more in common than we have not in common.
Exactly.
And everyone needs to realize that. So it gets, again, one of the reasons that I left the Republican Party is it gets back to Donald John Trump, OMB, Orange Man Bad, the guy with the dead orange cat on his head. Why did it take Trump to say to people, everybody, and then target black Americans, Hispanics, anybody of any paint job, and say, what have you got to lose? Come vote for me. And then went out and actively solicited everybody come into the tent. And then unemployment was the lowest it was in 50 years.
Gas prices.
For black Americans and Hispanics. And now it's all being undone. But the point of the show is don't buy off on the leftist crap. Don't let people tell you that you don't have anything in common when, in fact, you have everything in common. Tons of stuff in common. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Because you and I were just sitting down like two dudes having a convo about conservatism and our families. And then I thought, and I said to Lonnie, because that's his name.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
I said, what? Did you laugh at that? Jesus. That's sad. God, that's sad.
I think BC tickled himself.
Yeah, I did. I tickled myself because you tickled it, and then I got tickled. And okay. All right. Moving on. But the thing I wanted to everybody to realize is you can have a good time. You can be good people. We're all good people. We mostly all want the same thing. Conservatives, and I would sum it up somehow similarly to, and there's going to be a lot more. This is just the crap that comes off the top of my head. We don't want to be fucked with. Smaller government, fewer taxes, and believe in the individual. Believe in the individual and let the individual make the selection for themselves as to what they want to do and where they want to go. And sure, you're not going to throw people aside. It's the conservatives who are the charitable ones. It's not leftists. It really isn't.
So very true, my brother. You know, several things come to mind when you so eloquently lay things out the way you have. One of the things is, I'll just use my relationship with my good friend Mike.
Bartender.
And
it's great.
As our bartender extraordinaire makes the rounds again. I might not leave.
He's extraordinaire.
I might not leave the studio this evening. I just want you guys to know. Just pull out a cot for me over there.
There is a sofa right there.
There's nobody in my kids' room.
So, if I use the relationship I have with my good friend Mike Fitzpatrick as a sterling example, we've known each other over 30 years. Blew me away. He mentioned that the other day. And the reason why we so famously get along, and he saw it before I did, we worked at the same place. We just kind of clicked, and then we've been buds ever since.
And you were tech guys.
And we were tech guys, working at the same tech company. And the reason why we get along, because we have similar experiences. We come from a similar family environment. Now, the elephant in the room is he's white Irish Catholic. He's about as far from being black, except when it comes to music.
Kind of black.
Okay, that's true. And then there's the old. I'm not going to go down that road. Just thinking about what they say about the Irish and black people. No, I'm not going to do that.
No, he wasn't referring to the black Irish, was he? Sean.
I was going down. No, I'm not going to do it. But we got along because we had similar values, because we came from a similar place. We had a similar upbringing. We had similar expectations put upon us by our parents. And it was really interesting because his father and mother had a chance to meet my father and mother. And it was really funny, the comments that came back. His dad, classic alpha male. My dad, classic alpha male. As my dad says to me, you know, son, that there Mike Fitzpatrick's dad, what was his name? Jerry. I said, yeah. I said, good guy, like him. And then Mike says the exact same thing to me that his dad said about my dad. Now, I got the darker paint job. Mike has the lighter paint job. In fact, Mike's so Irish that he shouldn't tan. He said, I'm going to have to get a tan. Don't do it.
No.
You just get darker shades of red, my brother.
Mike is listening. He's in the chat room at Facebook right now, and I'm looking at you, Mike. I'm looking at you, and Lonnie is looking at you as well. He's still in chat.
Tell Mike I want to defend him right now. I'm standing right here.
Mike said in Facebook chat, because this is, I can't see everybody that's in Facebook chat for whatever reason, on the little phone right here, but when you and I were talking about Bruce, back then he said Bruce would have taken over the show.
Yes, he would have. He would, and you'd have loved him for it. He'd have been, oh, man, we're going to miss him. We're really going to miss him. We're going to find some video clips that we can play for you all at some point so you guys can see. This guy was just, there's one of him marching up Market Street in San Francisco with the Archbishop of the Catholic Church right there. They're buds. They only met twice before. The Archbishop, hey, Bruce, come on over. He just had that kind of personality to draw people in. And he had a love for people that was as big as all outdoors. And so, you know, I've known him since childhood. Michael met him about 12 years ago. And he's just, and here and again, is a guy with a darker paint job. But he fits right in with what we all believe in, because it's about what we believe and what we stand for based on where we come from, than this foolishness they put out there in media, you know, that and white folks still hate black folks. Let me just say something, and I'm probably going to get some heat for this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Some of the most racist folks I've ever met happen to look like me. I'm putting it out there. And let me tell you, the things they've said to me.
Oh, see.
Black on black crime right there.
Yeah. See, that's one of the things that when I would have a black conservative on the show, one of the first things, because I want people to understand that, like lots of other people, You take heat, but you take heat from every direction. You take social media heat. You take public heat. You take private and familial heat. You take heat. You take organized heat. You take heat from the church. You take heat from work.
Mm-hmm.
To especially today, not just, I don't know, I started the show in 2017, 4 years ago. Folks like you, conservatives, were taking heat. Oh, the heat you're taking now. For having the temerity to speak to what I consider to be the truth.
I had a relative tell me, how far do I want to go with this? No, I'm just put it out there. I had a relative, a younger relative. Let's just say he's like a nephew. I'll put it that way.
All right.
Younger than me. Have the nerve to tell me, why did I have my ASS so far up Donald J. Trump's ASS? No, my head. Let me get more specific.
Right.
My head so far up Donald Trump's ASS. And I was blown away for him to have the audacity to say that to me when I'm his senior. I was around when this little clown was born. For him to say that, but it shows this TDS, if you will, that exists within the community based on false information that they receive.
Let me throw this out, and folks that are listening, especially if you happen to be black or white, it doesn't make any difference. Part of the dealio now with the LDAM, leftist Demorats, and ably abetted by the propaganda organ, the American media maggots, I believe that he feels that he can make these statements unopposed with impunity, because it's part and parcel of the whole umbrella thing of depersonalizing you, dehumanizing you, so that you're really not on the same level as he or her. You're not of the same strata. And because of that, you're now in the category of, well, you're not really a person. And so you can be addressed in any way they see fit.
Yeah, you've forgotten who you are, Lonnie Poindexter. I've forgotten who I am. Makes no sense to me. I remember how you used to be. That's the response that you typically get. The reality is, I haven't changed. I've always had these views. I just didn't verbalize them because I didn't want to catch the kind of heat I'm catching for verbalizing my views. But they feel that they are well within their rights, and they feel emboldened because they feel they have numbers to say these things, fully supported by the media.
Right.
And now in the same conversation, this individual says to me, because I was just letting him know that you realize I'm not an armchair quarterback. I do this for a living. I know what I'm talking about. And then I add a little more depth. I says I work with some of the foremost social policy experts in the field out of Washington, D.C. You know, I'm not some cat sitting in his Barca lounger watching football games, tossing back a few cold ones and then have an opinion all of a sudden. Then he responds, well, I don't know anything about politics. I said, then why are you commenting in the first place?
Yeah.
I'm just about taking care of my family. I said, well, if you listen to what I have to say, it'll help you better support your family. Anyway, don't get me worked up.
Well,
hold on. I need to pause.
The pause that refreshes.
BZ,
huh?
Get him worked up.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah. So here's what I'd like to do. For those who consistently watch or listen to the show, you know Lonnie Poindexter. When we come back, I got about a minute and a half before the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, for those who are not familiar with Lonnie Poindexter, what I'd like to do is have him give you a bit of his CV and what he's done. You've created some organizations, some groups. You've worked in D.C. There's a lot of veritas behind you. Your CV is large. Your professionalism is well known. So when we come back, I'd like to have you tell people about some of the things that you've done, some of the groups that you've organized and or been a member of, perhaps why you went to D.C. in the first place, and then we can continue on. But I want people to understand, and I think that's what this person failed to understand, because leftists in general don't know a thing about history, nor are they particularly interested in history. I think that's purposeful. I think it's by design, and it's also by education or miseducation. So I'd like to address that when we come back. Tonight, I am BZ. Tomorrow night, I will not be BZ. I could be somebody else. I don't know. Maybe I could be your love doll. And next Tuesday, I don't know what I'm going to do about next Tuesday. I haven't quite figured that out. But next Thursday, just to let everybody know, I have an individual coming in. You know Larry Laird, right? Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have said his name. Maybe he doesn't really care. Larry went to Vietnam. Larry was one of my early reserve training officers on the sheriff's department. I knew nothing about what I know of Larry now. And as Lonnie and I were talking coming into the show tonight, Larry went through Vietnam. Your uncle went through Vietnam. Your uncle did 2 tours in Vietnam. So I want to have Larry on to tell me a little bit about him, about Vietnam, the Vietnam experience. He was a helicopter pilot. He had to go through Pry-Fly. He had an IP, an instructor pilot. What was that like? Then he flew in Vietnam. What was that like? Then he came back here and became a deputy sheriff for the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. What was that like? And then he flew helicopters again here for the Sheriff's Department. So I don't know if he knows what's in store for him next yet, but he's going to be here next Thursday. And I am interested in basically all things aviation just because of my background. I was an Air Force brat. So we're going to talk to Larry. Tuesday night, I'm not exactly sure what we're going to have, but in any event, we're going to take a break. Be right back. I'm BZ. That's Lonnie Poindexter. Sergeant Booker is in the studio, and you're not. So, bye-bye. Right? Come on.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please, join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Unleashed Jeremy Hansen, the most explosive pro-American podcast on the planet. Pro-MAGA, pro-Trump, pro-conservative. Come join the resistance. Fight for what really matters in America. 5 p.m. Central on UJHLive.com, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Pandora, or MAGAbook.com. Come join the resistance and fight for America. Unleashed Jeremy Hansen.
Do you value yourself, your family, your friends? Want to know more about how to survive, thrive, and stay alive in these dynamic times? Listen to Around the Campfire with Kate, Thursday nights and Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central, only on PSN TV. That's Around the Campfire with Kate. News that nobody in the MSM wants to report. Remember, train hard, train smart to survive, thrive, and stay alive.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Network.
And we are back. I am the bloviating Zeppelin. That's Lonnie Poindexter over there. Across from me, Sergeant Booker is sitting in the saloon having some great booze with Sean. Well, Lonnie is having some too, as a matter of fact. It was stored at sea in a rocking ship because why not? So thanks to everybody in Facebook chat that I can see right now. Mike Fitzpatrick, Josh Kemp, and Melanie Colette. April Smith-Perham, thank you for being here tonight. In the SHR Media chat, thanks to Sergeant Booker, who is yonder. I'm looking at him right now. The Alaskan and one viewer who still will not be unmasked. We're talking to Lonnie Poindexter. Lonnie has done a ton of stuff in his life, and what I said before the break is I'd like to ask Lonnie, so that you understand a great deal about where Lonnie comes from, literally comes from, his background, his upbringing, and I heard a great deal about it, and I think everyone here should too as well, because it stands to reason that everyone here has an infinitely greater amount in common than we do divided. We cannot allow a united nation, a divided nation, to stand. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so with that, I always, Lonnie used to be in D.C., and he'll tell you about that in a bit, and then recently came to Sacramento. When I heard Lonnie was in Sacramento, I knew, dude, I got to get you on the show. And not just on the show, but physically in the studio, because there's such a great difference between talking to somebody over the teleolophone and speaking to somebody eyeball to eyeball, chatting with you in the car, talking to you on the phone about all sorts of stuff. Folks, don't buy off on the we are nothing like each other bullshit, which is spread by the leftists. That's their goal.
That's indeed their goal, my brother. And when you look at the history of us as a nation, which transferred to looking at the history of us as communities, the history of us as families, you begin to discover our true history. And the history of my family is not atypical in the black community. There's this myth that goes forth that blacks all came from the wrong side of the tracks, humble beginnings. Well, that part is largely true, but our origins coming from humble beginnings does not mean that we stayed at humble beginnings. And maybe it sounds a little audacious to say this, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I'm talking about a people who came from humble beginnings. Yes, true second-class citizens. We know the history, but individuals who found a way in spite of the government lay. There is a myth within the black community that until the government came along, our plight didn't change. And that's not true, because there's too many stories that I know of personally within my family and within my community of those who happen to look like me, like I like to say those with the darker paint job, who overcame in spite of. And I was jotting some things down, And first of all, let me just ask you this, because I went to public school. I don't know. You probably went to some private Ivy League institution. What does CV mean?
That's your curriculum vitae.
Oh, see, I told you, and it's in Latin of all things. Yeah,
basically your resume. Now, here's the other thing. When you're through with the show tonight, send a text or something like that to Mike Fitzpatrick and say, "Dude, what's a CV?"
I will definitely do that, because he'll probably know what it means.
He'll know.
He won't say he went to private school. He just say he went to school in Texas, because everything in Texas bigger, brighter, more shiny, just better all around.
The stars at night are big and bright.
Big and bright in Texas. But the story that comes to mind, I began to share it with you when we were conversing, is the story within my family. And there's two lines. There's my mother's line and my father's line. My father came from very humble beginnings. My father was the oldest of 5 children, born to a little bitty lady, my grandmother. I think she was maybe 5'1", maybe.
My grandmother, my grandmother on my mother's side was like 4'11".
Yeah, little bitty lady, but tough as nails, who raised 5 children on her own, who took 5 children from segregated Mississippi during World War II and moved them to California to give them better opportunities. Now, she only had a 7th grade education, because, back then you worked in the fields at harvest time and at planting time. Then after all was settled, then you went to school. So she was able to bring all 5 of her children. There was no affirmative action. There was no government set-aside program. There was none of that. She determined on her own. And I asked my father, I said, how did she do that? What did she do? He said, son, my mother's used to see on the citrus crates from California. Right. Those little wooden crates. They're collector's items now. The artwork on the side would show.
I've got a ton of them in my house.
Yeah, they're worth a lot of money now, right?
Oh, yeah, they are.
And those little frame Post-its on the side of those crates would depict California. It would show sunny California, land of fruits and vegetables, and all these types of things.
Blue skies, sunshine, plenty,
oceans,
land of plenty,
mountains. She got a vision from that one picture. She didn't know anything about California. She didn't even know anybody in California. So my grandmother pieced together enough money for a train ride to California, to the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, got a job as a welder. A welder. Can you imagine a little bitty lady trying to hold up a welding gun? She was like, what do they call Rosie the Riveter?
Right.
She was the black version of that.
That's the vision I get when you say that.
And she welded, and my dad said something with rivets or something on the ships. She did on the Liberty ships. In it was Mare Island.
So she had to be in the Bay Area.
Yes. So that's where she moved to. Saved up enough money once she got there to send for all 5 of her children. So the story goes that her older brother, Uncle Willie, had a chance to meet him, another little man. And, on that side of the family, they're all little people. He was a little man that carried a 45. When you hear the stories about him. Yeah. He said, wait, okay, I'm a sidebar here, but bear with me.
Colt made everybody equal.
Uncle Willie was a huckster. Uncle Willie had several businesses. One of his businesses was he told everybody he was too little to be yanking those cotton bales down.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying, or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
In the aisles picking cotton in the South back during that time. I'm a little bitty. You know, he said, I can't pick up those things. They weigh 4 times what I weigh. So what he would do is he would go pick a bale of cotton, or as much as he could pick, turn it into wherever they turned it into at the gin and what have you. And then at night, he and a couple of his buddies would break in the back door of the gin and go in and steal the cotton. Did something that they had brought to the gin that day and go back and then resell it. So when you meet him, he wore a fedora hat. I'm on a sidebar here. Forgive me. Got to share it, though. Amazing man. I don't cotton stealing anything from anybody, but it's really story when you hear about
entrepreneur.
The huge entrepreneur. That's what he was. So anyway, Uncle Willie brought his 5 nieces and nephews to California on the train. They had to wait for a certain train that had a conductor that would allow them to get on the train because, you know, there was segregation. But he knew the conductor. He was a very resourceful man, got the children on the train, and they went to California. Now, I'm saying all that to say this, and I'll make it quick. My grandmother saved up enough money with 5 kids to buy a home. This is the 40s, folks. Little black lady bought a home to put her 5 children in. And my dad said it wasn't the worst neighborhood, it wasn't the best, but we were proud of it. So he brought, back up, Lonnie. She bought them a home to live in. The war ends. Jobs dry up. She's without income. They lost the home. So she packs up her 5 kids and she moves them to Central California. This would be the 5 Points area, Coalinga. That's smack dab middle of the state. Farm Belt. Still Farm Belt today.
Oh, great soil.
And she lived on a farm and she worked as a fruit and vegetable picker for the farm owners. And so what they'd have, and they still kind of do this today, they have little residences for folks to live in. Well, back in those days, it was a tent, as my dad says, with a wooden floor. I said, so, Dad, all 5 kids? He said, yeah, we all lived there. So I asked him this. I said, did you know you were poor? And my father had to stop and think about it. He said, well, I never really thought about it like that. I guess we were, but we didn't think about it like that. He said, we had food to eat. Sometimes it was the same thing, but we had food to eat. We had a roof over our heads, and we had love, and we were all together. Living in a tent with a wooden floor. And my dad says that they had to keep that tent spotless because my grandmother would not cotton to anything else. It had to be. So let me move forward. My father goes to school in this town. And he's ridiculed because of the color of his skin. He gets into fights. And so he was the only kid in his grade that was black because he was behind in his schooling and because of picking fruits and vegetables. So the kids would harass him. He said he got beat up a lot. He said, but a teacher came to his defense. And this teacher gave him a book. And the book was the autobiography of George Washington Carver. And you had mentioned that a little early prior to the break. George Washington Carver. My father read that book from cover to cover. He saw someone who looked like him, who accomplished something great in life. And he said he got a sense of who he was. He said because his spirit was almost broken from the harassment. He says, son, so after that book, he says, I still got into fights. They still wanted to beat me up because of what I looked like. He said, but I started winning a lot of those fights because he had discovered who he was. And he said he went forward from there. Now, here's the interesting point. The teacher that gave him that book was not black. It was a white teacher that gave him that book. So this whole thing about, white folks bad, black folks oppressed, and all that kind of stuff, it gets me worked up is what it does. And I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can.
Take all your time. We got an hour and a half.
Okay, this story goes forward in a miraculous way in how I got here. She eventually moves back to the Bay Area. They're not in the house anymore. They lost that. So now they're literally on the rough side of town. and they're living in a walk-up behind, retail stores in the hood. And there's unsavory people around. But she kept all her kids together. And my father says what kept him out of trouble was his focus was on his church and the pastors and the elders within the church. He says, whereas others in the neighborhood fell prey to the temptations, he says, I figured out that if I go that direction, I'll end up in jail. So he started listening to people. So my dad graduates high school, goes off to college, but has financial issues with college and wants to help his mom out. And so my father, wee hours of the morning one time, made a decision to enlist in the Army. He goes and he enlists in the Army, and my dad was a musician in high school. So they said, what can you do, son? He said, well, I'm good with my hands, and I play a pretty good horn. It's okay, well, we'll put you in the band. So he's all excited. He enlists in the military. But my dad says, son, he said, they took away my saxophone, and they gave me a rifle, and they shipped my behind off to Korea. So he goes to Korea, and he does, a year and a half or so forth over there. He comes back from Korea, and he comes to Fort Ord, California, which no longer exists. Fort Ord, California, and he walks into the clerk's office where he's looking to find out what his orders are going to be, that kind of thing. He's hoping they don't ship him back, this kind of thing. And he looks across the room, and he recognizes a face. And so the face recognizes him. Poindexter, is that you? Yeah, man. And then he says the guy's name. Let's say his name was Billy. And they get up, and they run over, and they hug like long-lost brothers. What's interesting is Billy is white. My dad is black, obviously.
Oh, that can't be.
So they connect. Where you been? I heard you went off to the military. Yeah, man, I went off to the military and was going to play in the band, and they took my saxophone, gave me a gun, and shipped my ass to Korea. That's what he said.
Son of a...
So I've been dodging bullets for 18 months, and now I'm back. And he said, good, you still play that horn? He said, yeah, I can still play. And so Billy was able to get his orders changed and such that he put him over the musicians. And so he ends up being over the musicians, because by then my father was a sergeant, I believe it was.
Okay.
And so he becomes over the musicians. So he says, I got to thinking about how God had blessed me to keep me from getting my brains blown out over there. And he says, I got to thinking, I made God a promise in Korea that if you get me out of this war alive, Lord, in one piece, I'll make you a priority in my life. So it's like the Holy Spirit reminded him, if I use church verbiage. And he asked him, he said,
when you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
There, a church in town. He said, well, what denomination are you? I said, I'm Methodist. So, oh, yeah, there's a Methodist church down there in town off Fremont Street on a street called Timothy. So my dad drives in his, I believe he had a hardtop Pontiac, 30-something Pontiac or something. He drove into town. It was his pride and joy. And he turns onto the street where the church is, little bitty church. That church is still there today. He gets out the car. There's two little girls playing on the front steps. And these little girls start flirting with him. He said, you guys are cute, but you're too young. Do you have an older sister? And they said, one says, yeah, we have an older sister. She's inside the church. And the other one says, yeah, she's playing the piano. And then the first one that responds, yeah, she goes to college. She thinks she's something. So those two little girls end up becoming my auntie because my dad went in the church and met my mother there.
Wow.
And the rest is a year later.
Stories like
they
that.
were married. A couple of years after that, I came along. I'm saying all that to say this. That's true American history. It's not just black history. It's American history of folks who come from very humble beginnings but overcome. My father became very successful. He became a corporate executive in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Daddy, how did you do that? He said, well, my mom taught me. Your grandmother. I said, grandmother taught you that? He said, yeah. I said, well, what did she teach you? She said, faith in God, focus on your goals, and the third thing is do not let the peripheral, my dad had a colorful word for that, peripheral noise distract you.
BS.
The BS, exactly. It's saying that. So I live my life. I said, that's it? He said, yeah, that's pretty much it for me. That's pretty much it for me. Okay, here's my last one. I'm going to shut up because I know there's a lot you want to ask me. My father is married to my mother. I'm born. They're pregnant with my sister. I have two younger sisters. And they relocate to Southern California from the Bay Area. And my dad's looking for a job. He's a good machinist because he works well with his hands. He was a bus driver in the Bay Area. He goes to Southern California, land of openness and freedom and so forth. He can't get a job because he's black, but in the Bay Area he could. So his military buddy, tells him, hey, man, they're hiring down at where I work. So he goes down to where his friend works, he said, because they need a machinist there. He goes in the machine shop, does his thing. Guy said, yeah, man, you're a good machinist. You could use a guy like you. But we can't hire you. Well, why can't you hire me? He said, you see all those machinists in that shop? And they're all white machinists. They all say, if you hire that Nigger, we're all quitting. I said, Dad, he told you that? He said, Lonnie, they didn't hold back then, son. They told you what was on their mind. So I said, what did you do? He says, well, I said, okay, if I can't have that job, are there any jobs that I qualify for that I could have?
There's the difference right there.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
And so the guy responds, yeah, we need a janitor. So my dad said, okay, I'll take that job. I said, Dad, didn't that, he said, yeah, it hurt my feelings and all that. I had responsibilities. I had you, your mom, and your little sister was on the way. I had to get a job. So he got the job. And I said, then he said this. He said, son, but let me tell you something. I made a promise to God and myself that before I left that company, all those suckers would be working for me.
That was my very first thought.
And when he left that company, that's what happened.
You tell me that to my face, and all that does is strike a match in the burner under my butt to make me work and make sure that, oh, really? Is that how it's going to be? Well, let's see what it's like in a year.
Yes.
Or 2.
Yes.
Or 3.
Yes.
That's the match under the butt that lights the great American fire.
It is. Oppression, if I could get people to understand this, oppression produces a fire that fuels you to bring about change.
Like almost nothing else does.
Exactly. Oh, watch this. Just watch me work.
Yeah.
So you can see yourself as a victim. Oh, look what they did to. I hate that. The black experience in America is one of overcoming. It's not, we're looking for somebody to deliver us from this. Oh, federal government, please. If you know your history, you'll know the federal government didn't step in to help black Americans until black Americans first stood up and said we had enough of this foolishness.
Was it not true? And I know you'll set me straight if I'm wrong, that during the 50s, probably the 40s, the once nuclear black American family was generally as nuclear, if not more so, than the white nuclear family.
Prior to you hit the nail on the head. Prior to the mid-'60s in the civil rights movement and the Voting Rights Act, the black family, 70-some-odd% of black families were intact.
Yes.
2-parent household. Second-class citizen? Sure. But intact. Intact. And that number did not change until the implementation of the Great Society program of Lyndon Baines Johnson. If you go all the way back to the Depression, the black family was more intact than our white brothers and sisters during the Depression. So what happened, I would say we had a rough going on back then. So what happened and changed things? The implementation of the Great Society programs, which would include welfare, all the stuff that's supposed to here to help us, and it hamstringed us as a community by our own doing. By the way, we signed up for it.
Sure,
and we've been paying the price ever since. Washington D.C. is also known as Chocolate City. Large black population there. Southeast Washington D.C., just across the river from the White House. The number is 90. See if I can remember here. Almost 98% of black households in that part of D.C. are single parent, typically female head of household.
Could I make this observation now, Lonnie?
Sure.
You make an observation that hearkened a direct observation of mine. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I decided I wanted to work for the feds. So I got picked up by the FBI, and then I went to Quantico.
Oh, okay.
And then I went to one of my first assignments was WMFO, which is the Washington Metro Field Office.
Yes.
That city was the most strange, wonderful, bizarre, ugly, and odd city that I can think of, because the first thing that I noticed is each monument had its own police force.
Mm-hmm.
All of the monuments, all of D.C. that was official D.C. was perfect. And then it was as if there was an invisible force field around D.C., and I make mention of this specifically. 2 blocks east of the Supreme Court, it's as if there was specifically an invisible... Now, this is back in the 70s. It's as if there was an invisible wall there,
mm-hmm.
and you could almost delineate it with a line. It was as if, at this point right here, it all turns to crap.
Right.
And you could see it. It's like on this side of the line, things are nice and clean, etc. And from this point over, it was wretched poverty, and the only faces you saw there were black.
Mm-hmm.
And I had an extremely difficult time then, as now, processing that, because I came from California.
Right.
That's not what happens here. But that was the first slap in the face to me of this city is like a 20th century schizoid, man. This city it's like a public psycho, and no one wants to talk about the psycho that's right there in front of your face.
Great point.
It's so bizarre. Now, I haven't been, admittedly, I haven't been to D.C. since 91. 91? Right around 91. So I don't know what it looks like now. All I can say is then I'm stammering because that was such a difficult concept to grasp. Okay, I got to take a break. It's the top of the hour. It's 9 p.m. on the West Coast. It's midnight on the East Coast. By the way, Ralph J. Chittum's
yes.
Sr. is in chat, I see. So Ralph is listening.
Hey, Ralphie boy.
So I got to take a break. When I come back, I would like to have you address, because this and more, because I love your family stories, because they're not just family stories. They're American stories.
American stories, yeah.
Which is why I love your stories.
And why everybody's trying to move to this nation.
Yeah. So again, I've heard this spoken numerous times. I think you may have even said that to me yourself. If this country is so terrible, why is everyone dying, literally dying, to get into this terrible, evil, racist country when the people that are trying to get into this evil, racist country aren't white people?
Right.
That's so bizarre. Folks, I'm BZ. That's Lonnie Poindexter. Sergeant Booker is talking to Sean in the studio, and we'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. Politics, border security, defense, healthcare, travel, nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website, www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Okay. Well, how dare it do that? Run out of time. Run out of okay. All right. See, folks, that's what I get for listening to Lonnie, because at the end of the show before the break, we take off our headphones and we have a little chat. And then Sergeant Booker and Sean are having their own little chat. And Lonnie and I are having our chat. And then I'm not paying attention to the show. And then the break ends and there's dead air. I hate dead air. I absolutely hate dead air.
Well, even you professionals sometimes, you know.
Well,
hey, it just shows you're human, that's all.
No, but one of the things that I was talking about is you have great stories. And I loved listening to your family stories when we were talking about two and a half weeks ago, which is why I wanted to have you here tonight, because I just love listening to people that know their family history. You and I were speaking on the way over here. I lost a great deal of my family's history Because, and folks, please don't let this happen to you, because I will regret this until I myself pass away. My mom died of COPD in 2002. There was a huge book, private.
When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do meaningful work every day. You get to be the biker who codes as fast as he rides, crafting advanced tech solutions that transform car buying. Or a guitarist who develops harmonious apps and websites, connecting people to people and businesses, all in real time. A savvy soccer mom running solution sets as passionately as she runs gameplays. Be the super secret keeper, designing cybersecurity systems to protect private data and websites. A planet protector, expanding EV battery life and inventing more ways to build a better future for all. When you work in tech at Cox, you get to do career-defining work that solves the greatest problems of our time. Join us and connect to work that improves lives, including yours. Learn more about our family of businesses at cox.career/tech.
Published of the background of her side of the family. So I had access to this book until Dad passed away, and that book magically disappeared to another family member. So my mother's side of the family is gone, and she's gone. She died in 2002. Now my dad continued. My dad was in World War II. My dad flew B-17s. Dad did not want to talk about World War II. The greatest generation, those individuals, were not the kinds of people who would sit down and speak to you at length about World War II. They saw, just as your uncle, I'm sure, saw in Korea, terrible, terrible events in war. Dad brought back a Walther PPK inscribed with a German. It was the frame was struck with a German eagle and swastika, and had a holster like that. So that intrigued me, and I used that to try to get him to open up and talk about World War II. And then he came back during Vietnam, but he didn't go into Vietnam. So my dad passed. He lived 7 more years. He passed in 2009. All during that time, now I've lost my mom's background. I've lost her history. I should have been interested in her side of history, but I was all into myself, living my life, and not until later, like probably so many people, did I realize that's gone. I'll never, ever again know something about my mom's side of the family. And then, because things got even busier for me after Mom's passing, I kept telling myself, I'm going to sit down with Dad, and I'm going to... Dad was in World War II, flew B-17s, came back. He was an instructor pilot on B-25s of all the damn things that made absolutely zero sense. Met Mom, went to Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 when the UFO allegedly came down in 1947, and only in retrospect that I think, God, Dad was in Roswell in 1947. Why didn't I ask it? There's so much I will never know about my father, and I should have made a pointed effort with both, because now both sides of my history, my mom and dad, they're gone. It's gone, never to return. I will not know, ever. Folks, don't let that be you. Which is why, for me, your stories are your stories, but to me, they're personal, because I kind of get to live what might have been a part of my life through you, because you know these things, and I don't. And I never will. Which is why I love the stories that you talk about your family, because not only are they American, stories, but they're American success stories. So,
but you know that generation,
they just super resonate with me.
Well, thank you, brother. But you know that generation, in defense of you, is my father didn't start talking about his military experience until much later in life. The other thing is I'm nosy, and I'm a motor mouth. You know that. That's why I do radio. And so I pepper them with questions.
I should have. I should have.
But my mother is really the one that pushed me forward in this area, because my dad always says, the older I get, the more I'm like my mom. And because my mother would chronicle things. My mother's got notebooks like this, just full of information.
Oh.
I said, Mom, put it in the computer.
Wonderful that would be.
The one time she did enter it into a computer was on the old Demorats disc, remember, and proprietary systems.
Was you're talking back when a floppy disk was really a floppy disk?
So she did that one time, and then when she discovered it and found out the stuff that was on those proprietary floppies you couldn't transpose, and she's, that stuff, I tried did all that work. I said, Mom, you can still do it. But anyway, she's the one that kind of got me going with that. And my grandmother on my mom's mom, who I spent a lot of time around, because I used to just pepper her with information to learn things. I'm trying to understand, why am I the way I am? Why is our family the way it is? And it's because of where we come from. And on my mom's side of the family, interesting, amazing story, one of overcoming in spite of my grandfather. My mom's dad was a tall man. That's where I get my height from. My dad's a little guy. But my grandfather on my mom's side, her dad was tall, about 6'3", which was tall from back in those days.
Sure.
And so as I began to learn more about him, I began to learn more about myself. He was a musician, and he played piano, ragtime.
Mm-hmm.
He played a piano, and he was a demonstrator for the Wurlitzer Piano and Organ Company. That was one of his side hustles. But his main gig is he was a master barber. So he was an entrepreneur. It wasn't enough to work and cut hair. He had to own the barbershop. So when he got through, he owned 3 barbershops.
God, that is
so my memories
fabulous.
of him is this tall, distinguished man with these long fingers. And when he played the piano, he went through a whole little formality before he sat down and stretch his fingers and do all this and clear his throat, baritone voice. And then his fingers would just fly up and down the keyboard. So as a kid, I saw that. And so this man, who had 5 daughters and 1 son, and his mom that he took care of. And he moved them from Oklahoma to California because his wife, my grandmother, had an older sister who was living in San Francisco, and told him, and his nickname was Bubba. And she said, you should tell my grandmother, you tell Bubba to come to California, because they need a barber down there in Monterey, California, to cut those black servicemen's hair. So that's how he found out about it.
Okay, so for those not in California, we spell it with a K. Monterey is still the center of the linguistics unit of the U.S. military. So if you want to or have to learn a language in some aspect of any of the services, your butt gets sent to Monterey. Now, for those who are not familiar with Monterey, the Monterey Bay Aquarium is there, and its own little funny capsule in time. It seems never to have been really affected by much of life. It's as if you walked into a 1940s or a 1950s city where the buildings pretty much look the same. It's right on the ocean. It's beautiful.
Breathtaking.
Absolutely gorgeous. From almost any slightly elevated point in Monterey, you can look out onto the bay and see the spouts of whales. You can see their breath from a distance, you can see them sounding. You can see their whales. If you get close to the ocean, you can see octopus, and you can see all the little animals that are over there. It's a gorgeous, sort of a funny little encapsulated place in time.
So true.
With a big military history, because not far from Monterey was, as you indicate, Fort Ord.
Fort Ord.
So they have a big military background. So
there's a naval base there too on Pacific Grove. Rich, deep history. I always thought the community would change when they shut the base down, because it'd been there since the 40s,
and it was huge
base,
massive.
And now it's a university campus. For what is it? CSU Monterey Bay, I think it is.
Okay.
They turned it into. But my grandfather came there during World War II. So he moved his whole family, and there's a great story behind that, but I won't go into it, to California.
Literally, you got time, Lonnie.
Okay.
You got time.
I don't want to track on too much, but I want to get to the main points. To California because he determined opportunity, just like my dad's mom did from Mississippi. There was no internet. There was no federal programs, state, county, local. There was none of that. You just figured out a way to get it done. He was self-employed his entire career as a master barber. And as I remember it, my mother telling me the stories, he had an interest in a barber shop in Arizona, right near a military base. And he had an interest in one in Delano, California, which is Central California.
Right.
And then they moved to Monterey with a little community called Seaside right next door. And as the story goes, he was busy working. So he had my mom, he says, 2 or 3 pieces of property, honey, go out and you take a look at them, and you look at 2, and the 2 you think they're the best. Because my mom was the oldest. And so my mom did that, and then during one of his breaks, which weren't often, he went to go look at the properties, and he chose the one that he had figured out he didn't need a garage for his car. The garage became the barber shop. So that barber shop is still there. It's now an apartment, but it was a barber shop. So I'm saying that to say this, that my dad, as he was courting my mom, see, when you have an intact family unit, my dad said, there is no way I'd have gotten anywhere near your mother without first getting the approval of her father.
Yes.
He said, and I had to get the approval of her only brother, which is a whole other story about how she had to deal with his brother. He had to deal with her brother. And but he had to go through the gauntlet. So in society, in America, and, we draw our links to what our society is from a Judeo-Christian perspective. That's where it comes from. Girls were held in high esteem and protected. Today we live in you make your own decisions, do what you feel is. But back then, you had to go through the gauntlet. You had to go through the uncles. You had to go through the father. You had to go through the brothers, all before you passed inspection, before you had access. So there was 5 girls and 1 boy in that family. My dad and my mom were the first to marry, and then right thereafter, the other girls got married. My mom's sisters got married. They all married military men except for one. She married a jock, my uncle, who probably would have went to the pros. He was that good. And they got married, and most of them stayed married until, because they're all up in age now, until their husbands, died. Today we have an epidemic of, single, nobody stays married anymore.
No.
And whether you're a Christian person or you're somebody out in the world, the numbers are the same. But back then, there was things invested in society to propel people down a path that leads to. And my parents are successful today. They're still living, thank God. My dad's 89, my mom's 88.
That was wonderful when I heard that.
I asked him, how can I put this? And I'm not putting anybody down that didn't get this, but what I'm stating is this. My parents became successful, my dad says, because your mom and I stayed together. We worked through our differences. We had rough patches, but we stayed together. We continued to love one another even when we couldn't stand each other, and we found a way. And that's how we became successful, so that today they enjoy a high quality of life because of that. And I said, so that's it. That's it. When you look at the numbers, and I work with a lot of organizations in Washington, D.C., Heritage Foundation, Family Research Council, Media Resource Center, Center for Urban Renewal and Education, Star Parker's organization, which is how I got to D.C., and others who tout the data, the statistics. The Pew Research is another one that shows with familial breakdown, you have the disintegration of families, communities, and it just morphs up to where things on a state level and national level. Government has to step in and take care of more folks because the natural things put in place to keep those things going and moving forward aren't in place anymore. I benefit today, and I'm no spring chicken, trust me, because my mom and dad stayed together and are together today, and I benefit today, even though I'm a divorcee. I didn't want to end up that way. It's a whole other show. But I recognize that importance, and what you put forth on your show, BZ, is so important on so many levels, because when you lay out the true history, which is what you do, you show the connection points of how America came to be, what the building blocks were, why society became the way it did. America's not perfect. It's America, like my dad would say. America's got warts, son, but there's still no better place to live in the world.
Bingo. Wait, I haven't done this once all night.
All right. And that's the truth, because folks would say, well, they did this. America was the end of slavery, and there's not a nation in the world that did not deal with, in some capacity, slavery. Well, white people enslaved black people. Well, if you look back historically, you'll find white folks were enslaved too. No, they weren't.
And they still are.
Yes.
There is still slavery going on today. There's a person listening to this show right now, Kate Krasuski, who I've spoken on any number of occasions. Her job is to combat human trafficking, child and adult. Why? Because she herself was trafficked.
Yes.
In Europe.
Yes.
Found herself sold for a family member's debt. So that happened to her directly at a very young age. 12, 13, right around in there. And I'm sure you can do the math after that.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing is, young people, especially in my opinion, need desire. Don't know it, but desire to be members and accepted in a family unit.
Yes.
And unbeknownst, it's the yin and yang of humanity. Moms bring the mom thing, dads bring the dad thing, and from the two, good children will come. And that's how we got into, especially when I was living through it in the 70s and 80s is when it exploded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gangs, because young kids are looking for acceptance. There was no one to guide them. There were no families. Altogether, too many of the families then and now, and I'm not pointing fingers at paint jobs because it's true on every stripe, too damn many single mothers.
Hit it, brother. Hit it.
In this world.
Yes.
If there's... God, now, okay, sidebar. I used to be a great devotee of Hugh Hewitt. Hugh Hewitt broadcasted from Los Angeles.
Yes.
Okay. Loved Hugh Hewitt. Used to be in the chat room, blah, 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 blah. Hugh Hewitt left and went to the East Coast. He's on at 3 a.m. in the morning in Pacific. No, I'm not getting up at 3 damn a.m. to listen to any stupid Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah.
Larry Elder came in.
Yes.
And broadcasts live at 3 p.m. Pacific, and I listen to him now.
Right.
I would actually much rather listen to Larry Elder because Larry Elder knows history, brings a viewpoint, and stresses, especially for every community, not just blacks, but every community, whites as well, and stresses family. Larry is a libertarian. I met him at Freedom Fest.
Yes.
Larry is an incredibly cool guy. He's one of these guys who you've met, and you can probably tell me of one, where you can tell there's so much going on in his head so fast, his mouth can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
He's one of these incredibly smart, wicked, as Sean would say, wicked shop. Wicked shop. He's wicked shop.
Must be from Boston.
On his feet. Yeah, Larry's from Boston, I'm sure. I enjoy listening to him because he says the thing that everybody needs to hear.
Yeah.
We need the family.
Yeah.
It's without the family that we are breaking apart right now.
Yeah.
And we are being destroyed by leftists. Leftists destroy everything they touch.
It's our core issue, brother. It's not race. It's not any of that other stuff. That's all the false narrative. It's the breakdown of the traditional family, and the canary in the mine shaft is the black community, because this stuff was test marketed on the black community. And thank you. I just had a thought came to me. There's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Patrick Fagan. He heads up the Maury Institute for the Heritage Foundation. And they've done exhaustive research on this. I mean, they can tell you a kid that was born in a single-parent household in Southeast D.C., that by this age he'll be into this, by that age he'll be in this age he'll be either deceased or incarcerated. And they're that accurate with their research. And so I use them all the time as where I go to get information. And he said to me, and Dr. Patrick Fagan is Irish Catholic, born in Ireland, came to the States to do his advanced studies. And I asked him one time, why do you care so much? He's given all this data. He said, because in Ireland, I saw the same thing taking place that I see taking place in the black community. And he said, here's what I want you to understand, Lonnie. He said, slavery did not break the black community. See, that's the assumption that the left puts forth.
Right.
That's why blacks don't have anything in the hood and all that. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Because if you look at the numbers, going back with my earlier statistics, when we had two-parent households, blacks fared better, even though we were second-class citizens. So that's malarkey. He said, it did not break the black family. I said, slavery didn't? He says, no, because guess what happened after slavery ended and during Reconstruction? I said, what's that? He said, black families reunited. He said they didn't have the internet and so forth to find people, so it took them a while, but they found who their loved ones and where they were. If you read about Frederick Douglass, after he was free, found his wife. I mean, they found their families and reunited with them. So slavery did not break the black community. They reunited. If you look at the numbers for education, when blacks could not go to schools with whites, black schools were created. Did black schools have the resources that the white schools had? No. But they still produced a superior product because of the commitment of the teachers. The teachers that were teaching at black elementary school levels, advanced degrees, the universities that were created, the HBCUs, which were all created by white folk, by the way. For those of you listening out there, I thought, even though the names, Howard University in Washington, D.C., very esteemed university. No, white dude, Howard. White dude. Yeah, blacks were in the foundation of it and building it because the finances had to come from somewhere. You look at all those schools, they produced a superior product. So my point being, I don't have the data off the top of my head. Blacks went from being primarily illiterate post-slavery to within half a lifetime becoming primarily literate. That has never happened in the history of mankind any other place in the world except in the U.S. of A. within the black community with black. So how did that happen? We had our own schools, our own hospitals. Wherever we could not intersect with our white brothers and sisters, we created our own. Then the civil rights movement comes, and that's when the next threshold was attained. But if you look at the numbers and you look at the data, we achieved. And we achieved in spite of. So when you got these young people screaming, I've been racially oppressed, it's offensive to me. I'm 64 years old. I've seen some things. My dad's 89. I have not seen the things that my father's seen. You know, when you had to walk on the other side of the street and all that kind. I didn't experience that. I experienced nothing like that. So for kids to be screaming in the streets and hollering racism, you know, because of law enforcement, then you look at the data, it shows, and I'll just say this, and I know your audience is extremely literate in these areas, is that it's a myth that police are running roughshod over black males in America. The data does not support it.
The data, the facts, the murders, the injuries, the assaults do not support that. I can tell you with clear. I got to go to a break here in about 30 seconds, but I'm going to wrap this up before the break real quick. I worked during the greatest amount of gun crime and general crime in the history of the United States, in the recorded history of the United States. And that was during the 1990s, and that's when drugs literally exploded, where you would have people killed, young kids killed for wearing the wrong colored shoelaces in their shoes. Right. That's how I got into homicide. I was working robberies. The same suspects in my robberies were the same suspects in homicides. We were getting shot at unprecedented rates. Bodies were falling at unprecedented rates. And people are saying that it has never been worse than now.
Yes.
Well, I have a word for that, and that's this: bullshit.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we are back. It's the final 27 of BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show. Thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. My guest for the entire show has been Lonnie Poindexter, one each right there. Wait, let's look. Here's two cameras. There's Lonnie. There's myself. There's Lonnie Poindexter himself, one each. And I happen to be... Oh, there's Sergeant Booker in the background. You can still see Sergeant Booker. And there's me, the bloviating one, Zepulus, one each. The bulbous one. Round is a shape. I'm in shape. So thanks to Lonnie Poindexter for being here tonight. We're talking about, if you listen to what leftists are telling you these days, this man right here and I should have absolutely nothing in common, and we should be at each other's throats. And I'm sorry, but that's what leftist Demorats and the American media maggots want, and they're not going to be happy until they get it, until they get there. I've read Martin Luther King. I'll wager somewhere there is a movement to completely disregard and eschew what Martin Luther King has said.
And he was a Republican, by the way.
Well, yeah, and Martin Luther King was a Republican.
And his dad, and his brother.
And it's just...
How do you know that?
Because I know his oldest niece. And she told me.
Okay. And
Alveda King.
Martin would, well, I'll not state something, I'll ask something. Would not Martin Luther King Jr. be rolling in his grave right now if he were to see, and perhaps he is, witness to what's occurring to our society right now? It's as though you took all of MLK's work, wrapped it up, and scrunched it like bad newspaper, set it on fire, and burnt it, and it meant like, you know what, 1968 really didn't mean anything.
Right.
So then if this is what we're going to do to an MLK, and I don't know, this is from Young Frankenstein's, my father's work was doo-doo, meaning that why did MLK die? Why did he have marches? Why was he saying the things he was saying if we're just going to go ahead and segregate our society all over again, only this time it's going to be by POC, people of color?
Right.
As in, did we learn nothing? And the answer is no. We don't learn a thing. I call it historical Alzheimer's, and it's purposeful.
Great point.
It's purposeful. It is, as we both know. Here's the other thing, and you just said this. You didn't know you were poor. She didn't know that they were poor.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad didn't know they were poor.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in the only house that I knew that the BZ family occupied for 62 years before Dad passed away. Dad was lucky enough to have been in the Air Force, before he got out, he bought a house in Sacramento, and it was $4,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I can distinctly remember him saying, I paid $36 a month for a mortgage on that, and I had no idea how I was going to make the mortgage from month to month to month, because already I had a wife and 2 kids to support. So once he got out of the war, and he literally left and became a civilian, he said, I had to do something, and I had to do it right now. So you know what? I sold insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And I can distinctly remember the first time that I remember anything. For a while, we didn't have a TV. We had one of those big World War II type radios that was about 4 feet tall, about 3 feet wide, a huge speaker down below, and all the local stations had their own little pre-printed tabs on, and we listened to the radio. And we had a little teeny backyard. We had Dad had a 47 Pontiac that was not looking good. Mm-hmm. So he and my brother took out paint. They painted the tires with tire black,
mm-hmm.
and then they painted the car with paint brushes because it needed new paint.
Old school.
So I didn't think I was poor.
Yeah.
And then Dad got back into the military. Dad made bird colonel, and he was a little bit more comfortable. But kids are very malleable. They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And as they're growing up, now, today, they're being fed all of this crap that America is evil. And sooner or later, if you keep feeding people, they're going to start to believe and they're going to start to buy. And that's what we've got right now. I need a notation as I was listening to you in the first hour. And you were talking about how members of your family went, the barbershop was the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Had a barbershop. It was a going concern. It was in a garage. Then somehow he had 4 barbershops. How could you survive?
And a chauffeur.
And a chauffeur.
I didn't mention that.
Okay. Perfect.
How did he do that?
Perfect. How did you do that?
Yeah.
I submit one of the major differences is what you didn't have then is you didn't have government getting in the way. You could go and create a business. And if you had enough people and you had a good product or a good service, you know what? They'd come back.
They would come back.
That's like my mom went to this hairdresser, and it was in her house, and she'd been doing that for years.
Mm-hmm.
And all the folks my mom's age went to this gal. I remember Mom saying one time somebody came in, and they gave her a big citation because she didn't have a business license.
Yeah.
And she'd been doing that for years, and that's how she was making her money. People were successful back then because the government wasn't interfering, and you could be successful.
You could make a decision about what you wanted to do and execute that. He couldn't have done that today, you know.
No, and yes. Wait for it. And again, that's another one of my points is those things in those areas where people could succeed.
Yes.
In many ways, I think government is much more oppressive today than it ever was in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and a little bit up to the 70s. Who ripped the once nuclear black family apart? I submit it's the Demorats.
That's who did it.
The most, again, this is an opinion, for the most evil and cynical of reasons. Votes. Quote that is absolutely refuted now and again by everybody on the left, but was verified by Lyndon LBJ's black butler at the time, where LBJ said, I'll have these N-word, I'll have these N-words voting Demorat for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm. 200 years.
Yes, that was a quote, for the next 200 years.
That's the rest of their lives.
So
pretty much.
Yeah. I can't think of anything more reprehensible or cynical than that. And then that typified then as now, to me, the philosophy, the generational philosophy of the Demorat Party.
I agree, brother.
And that's what we have to deal with now. That's why I wrote this down. Government in the way. Government's in the way.
Every piece of civil rights legislation from Reconstruction going forward was initiated and driven by the party on the right. The civil rights legislation that was signed, I get in arguments with Demorats all the time over this because they don't know their history. I said the legislation was driven by the GOP. It was signed by a Democrat president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, but that legislation was driven from and had been driven from the GOP for years. It would be driven forward, get beaten back in the House and the Senate. They'd regroup, they'd try again. And then this time with Lyndon Baines Johnson, he looked politically at what the outcome would be, and he made a political decision. And that is why it was passed. Now, as I understand it, and this was told to me by Alveda, and from what I've read as well, that there were several times in history where the black community made a shift from the right side of the aisle towards the left. The Great Compromise, going back many years after Reconstruction was part of it. But when Bobby Kennedy convinced his brother to get involved with Dr. King being locked up in that jail cell in, was it Alabama or Mississippi? I forget. I think it was Alabama. That JFK got involved. Bobby made a phone call down to that judge. I don't have my notes in front of me, so I'm going from my memory, which is faulty, and put heat on that sheriff in that DA's office to let MLK go. That is when there was a shift in the King household.
Well, because it was someone who was of the Demorat side, who now this guy's standing up for me.
Uh-huh. That's when it took place, and you start seeing a shift again. The brash New Yorker, Donald J. Trump, big shift in the black community. Black males over 20% pulled the lever for the brash New Yorker. Black females, not so much, but more so than they did the first time around. And so there's a movement taking place. The black community is figuring it out. If they stop listening to mainstream media, they can get clever. I just had a friend of mine who was, she'd like to say she was conservative. She was a liberal, who prior to the election jumped the fence, so to speak, and she sent a picture of a Trump hat, 3 of them that she had purchased. And I thought it was a gag gift. I said, okay, she's just messing with me. But we kept planting seeds in her. Okay, read this, study this, watch that, read this, that kind of thing. And then she had her epiphany and said, oh, my God, I've been duped. And so that is taking place. The bamboozlement in this most recent election, I think the numbers were higher than what they anticipate based on the activity I saw in the black community. You're always going to have the folks that call me an Uncle Tom and all that. But there were a whole lot of folks, especially these young ones, BZ, that have figured it out. And so I'm excited about the future. In the meantime, these chuckleheads on the left are going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at us. I know you see that as well. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating, and I mention a lot of stuff on my show because the leftists and the Demorats have demanded that it is of great import. So I find myself being forced into crafting statements that kind of align themselves with that in terms of, okay, now I have to mention blacks, and now I have to mention Hispanics, and now I have to mention Asians. Because it's only through those lenses that people will begin to see certain things. Mm-hmm. Someone made mention, Sean over there, earlier before the show, that his son had just seen a movie by Larry Elder called Uncle Tom.
Yes.
And this movie was illuminating to the point where his son, who is, I think, 10 or 11, said, I had no idea that these things were occurring, and then watched it again. The lowest unemployment through Donald John Trump in 50 years. Yep. And people aren't listening. So I'm left again to try to figure out, to try to plot and determine politics in the future and the near future. And this is what I see, and this is what I would like your response on, Lonnie Poindexter. Frequently, and one of the reasons that I'm not a great advocate, I don't advocate at all anybody becoming a member of the Republican Party anymore, because as I've said numerous times, there really isn't a dime's worth of difference between the two. If there were, then they would have demanded E-Verify years ago to keep this country secure, but to keep this country secure for everybody. Mm-hmm. They would have demanded a clean bill for if they were going to ship money to the people who needed it, whose businesses were lost.
Right.
Now we're finding out that this leftist cry for the past, I don't know, at least decade, of 11 million. There's 11 million. There's 11 million illegals here in the United States. There's 11 million. By the way, there's 11 million in
California alone.
So the MIT study recently came out within the year, I think, that said, it's double that. It's 22 million. Yeah. Some people are theorizing, it could be 25 million. It could be 30 million.
Yeah.
And the gates are opening. The floodgates are opening on our southern border. And yet, the Black Caucus, Maxine Waters, you name it, any other political leftist, is throwing their hat in the ring for letting illegals into the country. Now, people who think that race is critically important, you go on ahead and shoot yourselves in the head, because that's what you're doing. So if you're looking, Maxine Waters, and any other member of the Black Caucus that supports this crap, if you think you lack political power now, you keep supporting this.
Right.
And pretty soon you'll go from, you got some political power too. You'll wake up one morning and you'll notice that all the representatives, all 435, a good bulk of them are going to be Hispanic. They're going to be illegal. They will have been let in courtesy of the laws that you wrote and the things that you supported in the executive orders. And you're going to discover very soon that whatever political power that you specifically sought for a strata of individuals, that's shot. That's done. That's gone. Why? 3 words. And I've said this for literally decades, since I've been writing it in 2004. Demography is prophecy.
Yep.
Demography is prophecy. Now, if you're folks, POC, people of color, if you're screaming for political power, well, keep doing what you're doing now and let people in who really at this point appear to have no interest whatsoever in assimilation. You can go to Fresno, California, the city of Fresno right now. I can take you through where you'll find the bulk, over 50% of the signs in the city of Fresno, California are in Spanish.
That's right. That's right.
And it looks as if you were going to the old portion of Fresno, California right now. It looks as if basically you're kind of in downtown Tijuana.
You are. Another shining example is Compton, California.
Where is this coming from?
Yeah. Well, they think, let me just state, Compton, California, and I know this from work I was doing with school systems.
I can tell you about
the school
Compton
district
PD.
is about 90% Hispanic. Compton, California was a bastion of the black community. In fact, going way back to the early 60s, late 50s, my parents lived there.
That's where NWA came from.
Exactly. So the school districts were primarily Hispanic, Latino, whatever you want to call them. The district management was primarily black. Ask me what that district management is today, the superintendent on down. They're Hispanic. So when they have a majority, and I'm not knocking them for it, I'm just saying this is how this rolls out. Then, because I had folks calling me, we need to do something. That was our community. I said, man, that's toast. My old pastor called it Catholic evangelism. I said, what's Catholic evangelism? He says, in the United States of America, if you keep having enough babies, you can run the show. He said, and he was speaking about that community. And I go, yeah.
Third time.
So what community is actually reducing in its numbers? The black community. Because of abortion and the other things that we were discussing that are happening in the community, the breakdown of the family. Here's what I suspect, and I'll make this quick. I think the lefties are depending on opening up the borders, letting all the Latinos in, and then that'll be their constituency that they go after. But I found something interesting about the Latino community. If you look at the numbers of Latinos that went pro-Trump, it's surprising.
See, that's the dirty little secret. That's the dirty little lie.
Because they're entrepreneurs by nature.
That's becoming exposed.
Yes.
Where did the hashtag walk away movement come from?
Yep.
It came from a little gay guy who I've had on the show any number of times who finally realized, you know what? I'm not being served by these people. All they want is my vote, and then they want me to sit in the corner over there and just shut the hell up and let them do whatever the hell they want to do.
Yeah.
And then you had hashtag Blacksit.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had any number of black, Hispanic, people of color voices come up and say, maybe they're not great advocates of the Republican Party, but it looks as though they're getting and moving over into the conservative side of the aisle. And they're predominantly done with the Demorats, which I think would explain. And I hate to point the finger and say you, but I'm saying this as a Demorat. You, blacks, are no longer faithful. I can no longer count on you as the Demorat party. Your loyalism has gone. So as far as I'm concerned, you're out. You're done. You're toast. Because I have all these new voters coming in, tons of them. And if I treat them and groom them right, just like you guys that are disloyal now, I'm going to get them all voting for me.
Yes. And then whatever faction of you that we can garner to support us in our leftist views, all we need to do is stir up every 2 years and 6 years.
Sure.
Perceived racism.
Right.
And you just got to go all emotional. And and it's what it Ralph was sitting in the chat room. He calls it it's like Pavlov's dog. He calls it how they respond and salivate behind the racism thing every time it's brought up. And this particular election cycle, they were very creative in how they did that with the foolishness that took place in Baltimore and St. Louis and other communities to get otherwise rational people just to go get TDS, I guess. I don't know what else to call it.
And again, that's another reason why I guess at CPAC, maybe this Saturday or Sunday, whenever Trump is going to speak, maybe we'll, I don't know, have some insight as to what he plans on doing.
Do you think he'll look to drive the launch of another party?
You know, I'm about 50-50 on that.
Okay.
What I was saying up until this point, because obviously I don't know, I don't have any real insight into anybody. I don't know anybody that knows somebody that knows somebody. These are just plain out of my butt prognostications. But the one thing that I believe that I can reassure everybody on the left is, if you think populism is gone, if you think that conservatism has gone, if you think people who believe in a smaller government, fewer taxes, in the goodness of America, in the U.S. Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, in the rule of law, in due process, if you think those people who believe those things are done and gone, you couldn't be more wrong. And demonizing any race, white or I had so many stories to talk about tonight. Literally, I counted them. I have 48 tabs up here of individual stories that I had just in case I wanted to talk to them.
Right.
And if you want to make an extremist out of individuals, call all of them, lump everybody into one corner, call them all racist, call them all white supremacists, call them all extremist terrorists. And pretty soon, you may just have a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we've seen it in history. People that think that they don't have a future have nothing to lose.
Exactly.
A government big enough to give you all you want is big enough to take away everything you have. Old story, but it's still true. And again, the whole shindig about this show tonight was, I'm Lonnie's generation. I'm Lonnie's age. We share a whole lot of similar stuff because we grew up in similar times. And we have infinitely more in common than we don't in common. Lonnie already knew that. I already knew that. The reason I have people on my show is to illustrate to everybody that we all know that, and people need to recognize it. People need to recognize that these are Americans. This is the future of America. We're going to have to go through these terrible contretemps. I get it. And it's going to get worse before it gets better, I believe.
True.
But I do see inklings of important, imperative change on the horizon. And here's what I don't see in it. I don't see the older folks in this, the Mitch McConnells who can go to hell, the Mitt Romneys who can go to hell, all the other, what I call the establish-hack Republicans, they can go to hell. But the new young bucks in the Republican Party, and people that are young and conservatives on both sides of the aisle that are coming over to the conservative side. There's our future.
Yes.
Yeah. You try arguing on somebody that is as sharp on their feet as Ben Shapiro.
Right.
You try arguing anything who's as sharp on their feet as Star Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Or the gal that's running for office right now. I can see her face.
Candace or?
Candace Owens.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Good luck.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to win an argument with those folks. You can't, and that's why everybody like you and me have to be suppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're winning arguments, and we're starting to win hearts and minds. So they're not interested, leftists. They're not interested in having arguments or discussions or listening to facts. They just want to shut you the hell up.
Very true. Unfortunately, very true. And even supposed conservative vehicles, media-wise, that are out there today, one particular network, it's a newer network that was launched last year that's supposed to be a new network that, okay, I won't name them right now, but maybe next time on your show I'll name them, unless folks figure it out already. And some of my cohorts applied for positions, media positions with this.
Did it begin with an O?
No.
Okay.
Not them.
Okay.
They're one of the good, at least I know, still one of the good guys.
Okay.
But this group is out of Florida. And one of my cohorts was told that he was too conservative for the network. And I said, but the guys that launched this thing are conservative guys. But see, they are establishment conservative guys who happen to be black.
And I think there's a big difference.
You see what I'm saying? So they only want to push so far. I won't disclose who they are. Next time we're on the show, I'll do more research and I can tell you exactly who it is.
Okay. All right.
But it's just what I'm saying because we got excited. Because there's no, and I don't like to differentiate based on color. I hate that. But because
but you don't have any option anymore.
Because the left is doing it and you got to counter what they're doing. I said there's got to be a network that speaks what we say that we can use to address the community of folks that have the darker paint job. And so when these guys sprung up and they got a chunk of change to launch this network, I was surprised to find out that they really wanted to be middle of the road. I said, well, they just want to be the black version of Fox. Because you and I both know Fox talks a good game, but when the rubber hit the road during election time, they folded over and did the same thing MSNBC, CNN, and all the rest of the alphabet soup of networks did. The exact same thing, and I'm done with Fox.
Well, and that you and I both know that in their little ears, in their little earpieces, they had producers chirping in their ears, drop that person, or stop talking about that, or we're cutting to a commercial right now. End it.
Yes. There's somebody a lot smarter than me said, go look at their board, Lonnie. You can tell which way they rolled. I looked at the board. I said, oh, Paul Ryan is on the board? He's a rhino if there ever was one.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay. That's basically it for the show.
Okay.
Lonnie Poindexter, thank you ever so kindly for being here tonight. Because I've said it before any number of times, I know that you're a busy dude, but would you, I don't know, hey, would you be available Tuesday night? Or should I just wait and see what you're doing?
Yeah, let's talk.
Okay.
Figure out.
Okay.
Figure out because,
all right.
You know, I love coming here. You guys have a great mixologist.
Yeah, don't we though? Don't we? Like I said, if I could have you here every week,
I would love to.
I would
love to.
So whether or not anybody knows,
just drink every night.
That's.
Come back. It's like a little kid with dinner. Save it. It's like a little kid with
Wait,
dinner.
Lonnie doesn't have that much.
I have much.
It's like a little kid at dinner. You're not leaving the table till your food's done.
Boy, you guys are these guys are a tough audience over here.
Yes, they are.
They're a tough audience.
But I love them for it.
So, folks, thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for being in chat on Facebook. Thanks to I've got a bunch of. See, again, I can't see all the people that are on Facebook chat. I see Joseph in chat. Melanie Colette is still in chat. Wow. Yes. Mike has been making a number of comments in chat. I see Sam. So if I've not seen you in chat and I've not mentioned you, I apologize. But I'm monitoring Facebook chat on a little teeny cell phone here, and it does not show me a fraction of the people that are in there in chat. So thank you for being in Facebook chat. Thanks to everybody for being in SHR Media chat. And I'll be back next week, and I hope you will be too. Pretty please. So this is me saying, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me. I'm really active on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, and I've got a blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by Joe Howard's Used Meat Company, because the Boeing company is really disappointing these days, and the Pratt & Whitney engines are blowing up like crazy. Tiaras are still by My Little Pony. Also, thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I'll be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks to everybody for listening live tonight. Thanks to Sergeant Booker for being here live in the room. Thanks to Lonnie Poindexter for being here. Thanks to everybody listening live. Thanks to everybody in the chat rooms. And thanks to all the people who listen to my podcast, and also to the American trucker. You keep America moving. God bless one and all. Have a great weekend. God bless you all. Take care. Be safe. See you next Tuesday.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night.
Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.